Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fourth SAT teaching session. It's me, Hasut, as usual, and today we are going to actually pick up where we left off. We are going to be doing more writing today, and then the next two sessions will be math, and then our final session will be writing. The purpose of doing this is to sort of combat topic fatigue. And I don't know about you guys, but as much as I love math, I've already gotten kind of tired of doing it two sessions in a row. So writing two sessions in a row should, fix that right back up. So let me do everything that is necessary. So we picked up last time from transition words. Now we're going to move to something even bigger, transition sentences. Also, okay, yeah, never mind. So let's take a look at this passage. Before we begin, I want to say something. So transition sentences, the purpose of them is to go from one topic to another topic smoothly. Because within a paragraph, you don't want to be talking about one thing and then all of a sudden switch gears and you're talking about something else. It feels very jarring to the reader, if you know what I mean. So let's check that out right now. So if you read this passage, deer mice are noted for their dramatic population increase after forest fires. There are fewer obvious food sources in severely burned areas, and fires often remove all vegetation, giving mice no place to hide. So the top portion, which is above the transition sentence, is basically talking about how after a forest fire, deer mice have a lot of problems to deal with. But what about after that transition sentence? What does it say? Because severe fires burn the top soil layer, mice are able to access previously unexposed parts of the seed bank. Furthermore, a lack of vegetation cover greatly increases the hunting success of owls, but this effect is likely counterbalanced by a decrease in predators in burned areas. So do you notice what's happening here? The first part of the paragraph was, oh no, the forest burned. Oh man, the deer mice have a lot of problems. But then the second part of the paragraph says, actually, there's a couple of benefits here to a forest burning down, that mice can take advantage of. And the problems presented by the forest burning isn't actually that bad. So the tone kind of changed, right? So the best way I can explain what kind of transition sentence you need is that let's mark the tone of the first passage in red, and then the tone of the second, sorry, not passage, they're both technically the same paragraph, but it's at different parts. This part is yellow. The transition sentence in terms of topics needs to be orange. So you need to go from, kind of, you're still talking about the first part of the paragraph, but then you're switching to the second within the sentence. So what does option A say? So option A is just listing out all the predators of the deer mice. So that is overall maybe a negative statement for the mice because it's saying, oh, wow, look at everything that can eat a deer mice. You're just adding more problems being described by the first part. That's not really leading into the second part though, right? So A is not necessarily a good answer. B, what about B? While deer mice are largely herbivorous, they also feed on arthropods like spiders and caterpillars. Okay, so I guess that's a unique fact, but how does the deer mice's diet outside of feeds relate to other parts of their diet? The only place where diet is talked about for deer mice is in the second part when they're talking about how mice are able to access parts of the seed bank. So the option B doesn't really make much sense. C, since deer mice usually nest high up in hollow trees, fires also tend to destroy their preferred habitats. Okay, that's just adding more fuel to the fire. It's very similar to the red portion of the paragraph, but it's not bridging it. D, okay, it starts with a but, so that means that there's a contradiction happening here. Good sign. But despite these apparent disadvantages, so it's acknowledging the disadvantages. So this is like the red portion. Oh, wow, I need to work on drawing underlines. The red portion of the sentence It's okay. The red portion of the sentence is like that part for let's say the second part of the sentence says it's actually possible that fires improve conditions for deer mice. So this is sort of like the yellow portion, where it's talking about the good things. So that means that option D is the best answer. Yes, the question is, what is the best answer? Basically, I'm just answering a question. So the question, oh, okay, you're asking, would the question say which is the best transition? No, they are not going to say that. You need to realize on your own that this is a transition sentence paragraph or question. And the way you do that is by noticing, you need to look at the answer choices. So answer choices, depending on the question, they're going to have a lot of differences, right? If it's a grammar question, then the option bank might have answers with different punctuation marks, for example, right? Well, if it's a transition sentence question, then the answer choices will usually be sentences. And also, the sentences will have very, very different topics. So if you notice that, that's kind of a giveaway that it's a transition sentence question, or it is some kind of like big idea question. So we will move on for now. I'm not going to be answering any questions about other topics. I'm getting some questions about reading. So I will not be taking those when we're not doing reading. But for those of you who would like to know, reading will be done with Mr. Chris, and that will be in the week after next week. So I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to do this question starting now. It's only one question, so 2 minutes is fine, right, guys? Someone just asked a test-related question. I'll just answer it right now. Are all the questions on the writing multiple choice? Are all the questions on the writing section multiple choice, or are there parts where you're gonna have to write your own transition sentences or write your own sentences? No, everything will be multiple choice. All right, everybody, 2 minutes are up, so let's come back and check out this question. So this question, honestly, is actually a little bit easier than it seems. Let me switch to red. So the top part, or at least the first paragraph, is talking about a movie and how it was criticized for being a little bit historically inaccurate, but the director responded by stating that the movie needed to have the expectations of a dramatic film, and that their historical consultant said that it was good enough. So the transition sentence, let's look at option A. Option A says, why then is historical accuracy important in films? So it is related to the first paragraph because, well, it's regarding historical accuracy, and it's asking a question, right? So a question requires an answer, and the answer is sort of given immediately afterwards. Kate Williams, a British historian, believes that filmmakers have a great responsibility. So, yeah, option A is actually a pretty good answer. So we'll just put a mark in there and say that's good. B, what about directors who are less concerned about historical accuracy? So if this was our transition sentence, then the paragraph following it needs to be talking about directors who are less concerned with historical accuracy, right? Well, that's not really what's happening. The second paragraph is still centered around historical accuracy and historical consultants. So B is kind of bad answer. C, consequently, do movies that take place in the very recent past require historical consultants? That is a question that is absolutely not related to this paragraph or these two paragraphs at all, because that's just a completely different question. So C is wrong. D, what sources should filmmaker consult to ensure historical accuracy in their films? This is not a good option either, because if that was a transition sentence, the second paragraph needs to be talking about sources. That's not what the second paragraph is talking about. It's talking about the importance of historical consultants. And even if you could say, oh, well, historical consultants could be considered the source, that matches up with option D. Well, that doesn't really work either because, I mean, both of the paragraphs we're talking about historical consultants the entire time. So why would you ask about sources? Because the reader should pretty much already know at that point what the sources are, which is the historical consultant. There's no point in asking that question again. So although A, in my opinion, is not perfect, A is the best answer. So A will be correct. Okay. Now, okay, let me move things around. Okay. Writing introductions. So the methodology for this is pretty straightforward. You just want to write a sentence that introduces the information following it in the best way. You don't want it to be too broad, and you don't want it to be, I'll say that more specificity, man, I always have trouble pronouncing that. More specificity is usually good for introductions. For example, first, let's read the paragraph. Let's skip the underlined portion for now. The paragraph is talking about these two people named Julie Levine and Julie Rocco. They desired a healthier work-life balance, but they were hesitant to give up their managerial roles. In order to retain these top engineers, the company proposed a solution, job sharing. So let's take a look at the first option. Does it introduce the paragraph well? Option A, 21st century has presented both unique challenges and innovative solutions to work-related issues. So it does kind of relate to the passage, right? Because the innovative solutions part is probably referring to the company's creative solution, which is job sharing. And the 21st century, we can kind of tell that this is a modern piece of text based on the context of vehicle creation and working from home and things like that. So that also relates. And now the thing is that the desire for unique challenges, or I'm sorry, the 21st century presenting both unique challenges. Are there really unique challenges here? Because having a healthier work-life balance, I mean, that's just kind of a normal problem that's been true for a while. So that part might be a little bit iffy, but A is a pretty good option. What about B? Companies are always searching for new and innovative ways to recruit the best employees. A good tool you can use is you should look at the introduction sentence and then think, what sort of paper or what sort of article would use this introduction? And for option B, I would think that a article about recruitment would be the one using that sentence. And this is not about recruitment. This is about two people trying to find a solution. So B is disregarded. It's not related to the topic. C, in 2007, two highly successful full-time engineers at a US car company faced the same dilemma. This is a very specific intro, and it's talking specifically about Julie and Rocco, right? Two highly successful full-time engineers, that's referring them, and the US car company that is referring to the passage as well. They face the same dilemma, which is a healthier work-life balance. All those points relate to the paragraph. I'd say C is a fantastic option and that it is better than A. And if it's better than A, that means that A is probably wrong. What about D? According to a national survey, the average full-time US employee works about 1,700 hours per year. Okay, so that is an interesting piece of data to know. And how does that data introduce the paragraph, though? It doesn't really relate to anything outside of maybe the point that Julie Levine and Julie Rocco want a better work-life balance, which means that they're working too many hours. But that isn't really, that's pretty much the only point it relates on. And also there's a problem of relativity, which is this statement trying to say that Americans are working too much or too little? They don't give any point of reference. They just gave us a big number and they don't give anything to go off of. So D, I would say it's an okay answer. It's like iffy, but C is the best answer. Remember, like I said, a lot of these options are going to sound enticing to you and you're going to think, oh, option A, like, remember what we discussed with option A? It has two aspects of it that match pretty well with the paragraph and one that maybe doesn't. But if you're going too fast, you might have thought, oh, option A, it sounds great already. I'm just going to put option A. But if you and you're gonna like get the question wrong because you didn't look through the other options. You could have found option C, which was way better. So make sure you read all the options unless you are positively, absolutely sure that you have the correct answer. That usually only happens when it's grammar related, since that is a logistical type question. And also people who are asking about certain specific points that I might go over, like such as commas and stuff, trust me, we're gonna do everything, okay? All the grammar stuff, that's towards the end of the writing slideshow. So here is some practice. I'm going to give you guys 1 minute to do this starting now. Yeah, 1 minute. All right, everybody, let's come back and check out this question. So the introduction sentence, let's disregard that for now, and let's check out the entire passage. So the passage overall is talking about empathetic mimicry, which is how people unconsciously copy the facial expressions, body language, and behaviors of those around them, and they can do it really, really easily. So, and this also leads to them feeling the emotions associated with the behavior. For example, like they give an example at the end, if someone else smiles, then we're likely to smile back. And that smiling can actually sort of reverse engineer itself and make us feel happy, even if we weren't necessarily feeling that happy before we smiled. So which choice best introduces the paragraph? So option A, how can happiness be contagious? So this is a really good intro because it talks about well, there's a lot of aspects of it that match with the paragraph. It's talking about emotions and it's asking the question, can happiness be contagious? And the whole paragraph is pretty much explaining how emotions can be contagious in a way, because the behaviors of those around you can make you do those same behaviors and then make you feel the feelings that are connected to those behaviors. So option A is a really good answer, and I doubt we're going to find an answer better than that. Let's continue on though. B, is it impolite to copy the behavior of those around us? So what sort of passage would have this intro sentence? I would say the passage talking about manners would have that intro, and we're not talking about manners, are we? And B is also a negative statement, whereas the whole passage is overall positive. So that means that, B doesn't really it just doesn't work here. C, can research reliably identify what makes people happy? That is a very scientific intro, and the passage I would use that in an intro would be, well, something scientific. They're asking a question about what makes people happy, and we're not talking about what makes people happy. We're talking about emotional mechanisms and how certain things make other people feel the same things. And you might think that's related because you might think that the passage is saying, oh, well, the passage is talking about how other people are making other people feel happy or feel this way. But option C is asking about the underlying mechanisms, like neurotransmitters, or what exactly in our brains is making us feel happy. So C is way too specific, and it's overall just not related enough. D, can people lie with their facial expressions? Some of you might think that this is a good answer because we're talking about empathetic mimicry, which is how people will copy the same behavior as you, and behavior includes facial expressions, right? And you might think, oh, well, it's just copying the facial expression. You're not going to feel happy if you do it. Well, what did we just read about? We read about how mimicking the same action makes you feel the emotion connected to the action. So D is straight up just kind of wrong overall. So A is going to be the best option. Yep. Also, if you guys are concerned about timing for the questions, I'll just let you know, the only reason we're spending a lot of time on these questions is so that I can properly explain them to you. I already said this on the actual SAT, you're going to be going much, much, much faster than this. And you're probably going to be finishing these questions in around 30 seconds, maybe a minute at most. Mahita, you have a question?
Yeah, so in all four of the answers, like A seemed to be like the only one that flowed properly with the paragraph. So when we're taking the test, like, and if we have like an introduction, like one of these type of questions,
Yeah.
would it be fair to like pick the answer that seemed to flow the best, or like would some answers not flow better like this one?
So you said that A flowed the best to you, correct? Okay, well, if the answer flows the best, then I mean it's pretty good intuition. You can put like a marker on that and say this is probably the right answer. You should still check out the other answers though. And also flow might not be everything because this passage, I think what exactly made you feel like this had a good flow is that the whole passage is very peppy and happy, and option A was probably one of the more peppy answers to take from this question bank. B, C, and D are all kind of negative and kind of downgrading or overly specific and scientific and robotic. So that's why A probably felt the best to you. And tonal match is actually pretty important. So if you feel like it flows well, then you can trust your gut a little bit and say that it is probably the right answer, but you should still watch out because other answers might have content that is more relevant to the passage, and relevancy might win over tone.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. We're getting more questions, so it seems like this one is a little bit tough one. Why wouldn't the answer be C? I thought that since the paragraph talked about research, C would make sense. The thing is, we're not really talking about research. They only said some researchers think that this is empathetic mimicry, and then they talk about empathetic mimicry. If you're talking about research, you would be talking about the actual research, like the research experiments, what the experiments were, what the samples were, how the experiment went down. You would be talking about that. So C is wrong because it is a research type intro, but you're not actually talking about research. It's just research is a small element of it that gives us the other information. Okay, so writing conclusions. This is another practice, and don't worry, it is very similar to writing introductions. I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes starting now, and you guys pretty much just have to read the passage and choose a conclusion that relates the most overall to the passage and gives like the right ending vibe. I'll obviously go more in depth when we go over the question. All right, everybody, 2 minutes are up, so let's come back and check out these questions. So we have our beloved US painter, Grandma Moses. That is a very nice name. She began her career at the age of 78 in 1938. Moses enshrined in her work bits of folk song and folklore, old traditions. Basically, all of her work was very homely and old-fashioned, that kind of stuff. The main point you need to draw from this paragraph is that her work was really popular with a group of people who were struggling to deal with a world war going on a few countries over. So what paragraph would wrap all this up? So the first option is her success paralleled and reinforced that of other artists at the time who depicted American life in a nostalgic light, such as Norman Rockwell. So the thing is that you should look at the question in case they have specific requests. In this case, there is a specific request, which is to state the main claim of the paragraph. So the second paragraph, sorry, the option A, saying that her success is similar to some other guy named Norman Rockwell, that would be a good conclusion if you're trying to lead into a second paragraph where you're going to maybe talk about a guy named Norman Rockwell. But that is not what the writer wants. The writer wants a conclusion focused on the paragraph itself. So A is a bad option because it focuses on something else outside of the information presented. B, Moses would sustain a successful career as an artist until 1960 when she died at the age of 101. Okay, well, that is the, we'll say, ending of Grandma Moses. But is that stating the main claim of the paragraph? I mean, B might be an acceptable ending just in general, but it's not what the author wants, because where is the main claim in this paragraph? It's just stating a fact. Maybe the main claim could be she had a successful career, but clearly in the paragraph, the main claim goes before that. Sorry, it goes far beyond that. The main claim, I would say, is that her work was different and it became very popular with a people who were suffering. And if you just read the paragraph, you can pretty much just see how I came to that conclusion. It's kind of self-explanatory. C, rather than focus on art that reflected their volatile present moment. So the volatile present moment, that is related to the passage, and how the American people were living through World War II. That is a good sign. Her audience could briefly escape to a simpler time. This is a really, really good option because it's talking about, for one part of the main claim, which was that people were suffering, which is reminiscent of the reflected in their volatile present moment. And then it talks about how her art was different and how her audience really liked that, which is referenced by this part. The main claim is strongly felt in option C. Option D. At the same time, artists like Edward Hopper, okay, we can just stop right there. It has the same problem as option A, where it's diverging to some other guy or some other artist, which is not what we want. We want to focus on the paragraph. So C is the correct answer. Let me see if there's any questions. Yeah, some of these questions I'll just answer privately later on. If it's not related to the main question at hand, then I'll just explain it later, usually, unless I feel like everyone can benefit from it. Also, if you feel like your question would help other students, then you can post it publicly. All right, here's a quiz for you. I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes to do this starting now. 1 minute per question. All right, everybody, 3 minutes are up. So let's come back and check out this question or these questions. Oh, okay. So, okay. Yep. So the first question is a sentence order question. Now, is the sentence one in a good spot right now? So sentence one is saying that a report by a Space Foundation estimated that NASA contributed $180 billion to the economy in 2005. So the rest of the paragraph is talking about money, right? And it is also talking about NASA and how they've contributed to the overall economy. So that means that option one is it works pretty well as an introduction where it is now. And also there's a dead giveaway. We can actually say option A is the correct answer because if you look at sentence two, it says more than 60% of the contribution. What is this contribution referencing? It's referencing the contributed $180 billion. If we move sentence one to a different place, what is sentence two going to be referencing? It can't be referencing something in a previous paragraph because that is information we do not know and we cannot rely on information we do not know. So we can just immediately say that option A is correct. Now, the second question, which is marked as number 14, this one is a little bit challenging because there are two good options. So we're talking about continued education in this paragraph and how it is helpful to everyone. And the first paragraph is, sorry, the first part of the paragraph, which is before the red line, is talking about its benefits. And then after that, it talks about how employees and employers need to work together so that they can take advantage of this. So the two good options here are A and D. B is wrong because nevertheless is used when you're disregarding what was said before. We don't want to disregard what was said before because what was said before sort of helps what is being said after, because we're saying, oh, look at how amazing um continued education is. And the second part says we need to also work together to make it effective. So they sort of kind of help each other. They play off of each other, not in like a normal relationship, but they do help each other, which is why B just doesn't work. C, regardless. Regardless is very similar to B. It's a disregarding transition word. So that is why B and C are wrong. Now, A, accordingly, is used when you the second part is related to people doing something, or if it is, or if the second part of the passage is a like a natural flow of events to the second part. And then D is used when something is just similar, right? So option D can work because it states that you can sort of view it as continuing education is helpful to both people. Similarly, meaningful professional development is a shared responsibility. You could kind of say that, right? But option A actually will be the better option because while the two parts of the paragraph are related to each other and they have similarity aspects, it is also a situation where there is a natural flow. Accordingly, or therefore, things like that, they're good when there is a natural flow of events. And in this case, the natural flow of events is continued education is great. However, there you also need to work together to make the most of it. So accordingly can be used to bridge that gap and say, okay, this is the case. Accordingly, you also have to do it like this. So let's continue on. And I'm just going to be reading questions. Oh, yes, sorry, I forgot to mark it. A is the correct answer in this question. And as for the first question, a person asked that the option A might be wrong because the second sentence says more than 60% of the contribution coming from commercial goods and services created by companies. Now, the thing is that um, option A, that should actually help even more because the last part of the sentence says that a lot of that contribution is coming from commercial goods and services created by companies using space-related technology. So that 60% of the contribution is still talking about NASA, even though it's talking about other companies because those companies are using NASA technology. Now, the last question is kind of a little bit confusing too. I will not lie. Honestly, none of the answers seem like the standout answer necessarily. Overall, the paragraph is talking about the lion dance and how there are so many different purposes that it may have once had. So, how do you conclude that? If you choose option A, which is the current function of the dance is celebration, okay, that can be a good ending. In my opinion, it falls a little bit flat tonally, and it's just kind of like a lame ending because you're not really referencing anything within the paragraph. You're just saying, okay, now the current function of the dance is celebration. The only thing you're really referencing is the dance. Um, so option A, I would say it's an okay answer, but there's probably going to be a better one. B, it turns out that the origins of the lion dance are irrelevant. So this is a disregarding type conclusion, which is used if you're leading into another passage. However, the question is saying which choice most effectively concludes the paragraph, which means we should probably be focused on that paragraph and not really thinking about the lead in into another paragraph. So option B, it can work sometimes, but this is not that case. So B is the wrong answer. Now, C, this is a nice conclusion. Why is it a nice conclusion? Because it references the sort of problems related to the dance, whatever its origins is referring most of the passage, which was centered around how nobody could really agree on what the purpose or origin of the dance was. And then it also it does it's like a better option A because it's saying that the lion dance is a joyous spectacle and a celebration about New Year. And well, option A was also talking about how it's a function of a celebration, but option C is better because it refers what was talked about in the entire passage in regards to the confusing origin. Also, option C has a happy tone to it, and the whole paragraph as a whole does have a happy tone, whereas, like I said, with option A, the tone of the answer falls really flat. So option C overall works really, really well. D, things are different these days, of course. This is very similar to B because it's like a setup type. Oh my God, that was a horrible arrow. D is sort of related to B because it is a setup type conclusion where you're going to be talking about something else in the next paragraph and you want to lead in into that, but that means it's also wrong for the same reasons B is wrong. C is the correct answer. So I hope that quiz went well with most of you. I feel like this was a little bit on the tougher side. Hopefully you got through that well. So interpreting and using graphs. Okay, this is one heck of a question. So you are definitely probably gonna have to read a little bit. So the first sentence, federal control of large areas of land has been a source of political controversy. So according to some research, rural counties with more than 30% of their land under federal protection. And then we have the underlined portion. Wait, I think I might sneeze. Okay, no, I'm not gonna sneeze. So the underlined portion is asking us to reference information from the graph. And sometimes you can just look at the graph and understand kind of what it's about, or you can look at the question and then the options and then try and figure it out from there. So we're talking about areas with protected land, right? We need to understand that first. Now, what is the graph showing? Let's look on the y-axis. The y-axis is showing us different tiers of protectivity. We have 0% protected, 10% protected, all the way up to 30% protected. This is talking about how much land is protected by the federal government. And then on the x-axis, we see percentages. And on the top, it states that the percentages represent the employment percent change. And we can assume that anything above 0% is growth, right? So if we put it two and two together, we can see how the amount of land protected by the government influences the employment rate of the area in question. Now, let's choose an answer that relates to this graph. You're better off looking at the answer choice and then deciding if it relates to the graph or not, because there are so many conclusions you can take away from this graph that you should look at the options first and see if they match rather than seeing if you just come up with a random conclusion and seeing if the conclusion is in the option choices. So option A, so you need to like still take the previous sentence into account for context so you can understand it. Rural counties, I'm just going to be starting from here so it's easy to understand. Excuse me. Yeah. So rural counties with more than 30% of their land under federal protection, excuse me again, saw job growth of more than 300%. So the 30% of their land part is talking about this bar, obviously. Now they're saying all these areas, they saw job growth of more than 300%. Now, is that true? Let's look. 345% job growth. That is true. There is a very high job growth, about 300%. And since there's quite literally nothing wrong with option A, this is one of the few times where I'll say, you can just say option A is correct. You don't even have to look at the other options because this is a logical problem. If you get the logical answer, then there's no reason to look at the other questions. Okay, here is some practice, and I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to do this starting now. All right, everybody, let's come back and check out this question. Okay, honestly, this question is way simpler than the other question we got. Probably because I kind of made it myself. I didn't make the text, I made the question up. But which choice offers an accurate interpretation of the data in the graph? So what is the data in the graph saying? We're talking about sea otters and kelp, and we see the two bars. The dark bar is sea urchins and the light bar is kelp. And we have different conditions on the bottom. So if there's no otters present, there's lots of urchins, not a lot of kelp. And then if you have otters, you have lots of kelp and low sea urchins. That's a pretty easy relationship to see. Now, let's see if we can find a good option. Option A, the presence of sea otters for 2 years or less will completely eliminate sea urchins in a coastal area. So it does match up with the conclusion we made, which is more sea otters means less urchins. But there's a little bit of nuance there that makes option A wrong, actually. That is because it says option A states that otters will completely eliminate. Now, if you look at it, option A is referencing this part of the graph. Does that look completely eliminated to you? There might be not a lot, but it's not completely eliminated. So A is actually lying. What about B? Even 2 years or less of sea otter presence can reduce the sea urchin threat. Okay, B is like a better version of A. It's A, but actually true, where it's saying that otters for 2 years or less will reduce the sea urchin threat, not completely eliminate it. So B is a great answer, and I'm only not gonna say it's 100% correct right now because I would say it's 100% correct, but we should check out the other answers anyway for the sake so we can understand why they're wrong. C. Kelp density increases proportionally as sea urchin density increases. What C is basically trying to say is that kelp, so it's saying that kelp go up when sea urchin go up. And that is clearly that is clearly not happening here because as sea urchin go up, kelp go down. So C is just wrong. D, even after sea otters were present for 10 years or more, kelp density was still lower than sea urchin density. Yeah, that is just an outright lie. I mean, look at this part of the graph. Otters present for 10 years or more. You're telling me that kelp density is lower than sea urchin density? Heck, the sea urchin density doesn't even exist. So D is just wrong. B is the best answer. There shouldn't have been a whole lot of confusion on that, so we will move on. Okay, choosing the correct word, precision. So the crazy thing about the English language, or pretty much all languages for that fact, is that we have a lot of words that kind of mean the same thing, but you use them in different situations. Do you remember how the beginning of writing we were doing a question related to dinosaurs, and it said something along the lines of this technology swears to improve the field, and we were all thinking, swear, that's kind of a weird word. Like that's sort of something like a human would use for like a promise. And I mean, sure, like you're technically trying to say that it's guaranteed to improve, but swear is like it's like a weird word. And then you guys all came up with a whole bunch of options that worked way better than swear. That is basically what we're going to do here again. So let's read the paragraph a little bit. It will be a little bit relevant. Actually, we kind of only really need to read from here. Okay. Beavers, large rodents that use sticks, mud, and leaves to build dams and streams, are perhaps one of the best examples of the interpersonal relationship among all aspects of an ecosystem. Okay, we're talking about an ecosystem, we're talking about multiple elements of an ecosystem. You can kind of tell what the paragraph is trying to say. They're trying to say that it's a good example of a connected relationship where things rely on each other. And for now, option 13, is the word that they have there good? So the two options I want to give you guys is eliminate the extremes, which is choices that are way too different, and eliminate tone mismatch, which is eliminate the choices with wrong connotations and feelings. You're not going to want to use a happy word in a really depressing setting. and vice versa. So the extremes are like just choices that you would never ever personally use in that situation. So that is something sort of intuitive. You can sort of tell what options those will be. Now, the options that I feel sort of don't make any sense at all is associative. Associative is used when, you know, two things are associated. Please don't get any nightmares from my awful drawing skills. That is when two things are associated with each other. They're connected. However, associative is used sort of in like a vaguely related way, and it can be kind of like I said, vague. And would you really say that associative is a strong word for trying to explain how connected things are? Associative is just kind of like a, oh yeah, like I know him sort of word. Whereas something like interpersonal would be, yes, our relationship is rock strong. So D, I feel it doesn't match the tone. We want a word that is very strong, that emphasizes the power of connection. C, societal. Societal is stronger than associative, but it's a weird option because societal is well, it's related to the word society, right? Now, society is talking about a big network of a single group of animals. You would say, like, so for example, a society of humans. That is where society is used more when you're talking about people, right? It's sort of like a people type word. You would use that for like a city or any group of humans. You rarely use it for animals. You might use it for animals if you're saying like there is a lot of an animal, they have a community, let's say like a society of ants. And that's pretty much the only time I've ever heard society used outside of humans. And however, the problem is we're not talking about a single type of animal. We're talking about a whole network of animals like beavers, large rodents, mud, leaves, and okay, maybe not animals, but multiple elements. And societal is going to be wrong because societal is usually used for humans, and it usually only references a single element. Now, A and B are very similar to each other. They both have inter as their prefix, and interpersonal, interdependent. They kind of mean similar things. But here's the catch. Yeah, you guys, y'all ever notice that interpersonal has the word person in it? Person means that you're talking about a human. And I guess you could say interpersonal, you could be talking about feelings, but it doesn't change the fact that interpersonal at its base is used between two humans or two people, two persons. Interdependent, on the other hand, can be used for anything. It can be used for environments, it can be used for animals, it can be used for non-living things. Option B in this case is a better version of A. So B is correct. You want to say that the elements of an ecosystem are interdependent on them. They have an interdependent relationship. Now, if this is a passage talking about two people or people in general, then option C might have been an okay one, and option A would have probably been the right answer. But we're talking about beavers, not people. Okay. We will continue on now. I hope that was a good enough explanation for you all. Okay, so a little bit more word choice guidance. So this one's a little bit more literal. So the question is, all Molly wanted to do was navigate a direct route to the beach, but her GPS kept losing its signal. So Molly wants to find her way to the beach, and what word should we use to represent that she's trying to find her way? So navigate, when we use navigate, you use navigate when you're trying to figure out where to go. So option A is pretty good, there's nothing really wrong with it. Let's check out the other options though. B, convey. Convey, the definition of this word is you're trying to forward feelings towards someone. You are trying to symbolize feelings towards someone, usually in a variety of ways. So convey, for example, an example of someone conveying feelings would be if there was a girl that a guy liked and he gave her chocolates. He's not saying that he likes her, but that could be a way to convey his feelings. It's just a word for defining, the definition is just passing on feelings or trying to signal something like a message, even. And it can be used in a literal sense, whereas someone tells someone else the camp is that way. Sure, they conveyed the message. It can kind of be used like that, but convey is usually used in a situation where the message is sent across vaguely. Now, we're not trying to send a message, and Molly's not trying to send a message to anyone. She's just trying to find her way to the beach. So B's definition just doesn't work here. It's just flat up wrong. Wow, apology. I kind of wasted a lot of time talking about the definition of convey, and then we just had to mark convey as wrong. Feels bad. What about C, voyage? Okay, voyage is not necessarily used in a direction finding manner. It's more used in a grand adventure type scenario where you're saying, I am going on a voyage, or I will voyage to the edge of the ocean, for example. It has a very bombastic tone to it. And the tone is a little bit too hype for this scenario. She's just trying to find her way to the beach. So C has tonal mismatch. And also, I mean, the definition doesn't really match either because voyage doesn't necessarily mean trying to find a specific path or way. D, maneuver. Maneuver is used when you're trying to say that something is trying to make an action or trying to go somewhere. And it is usually used in situations where the item has a problem with getting to the place in a physical sense. For example, the person had a tough time maneuvering through the dense crowd. He is physically restrained and is having problems moving. So you would say maneuver, maybe, in that case. And you would also say maneuver as like a defined set of actions, like he is performing this maneuver. Now, the definition doesn't really match up here either because Molly maneuver can kind of work, but it's not the best option because she's trying to find her way to the beach, and maneuver doesn't convey any ideas of trying to find a path. Maneuver more conveys the idea, wow, we're using convey and we just defined convey. Maneuver is trying to convey the idea of following a set path or trying to at least make a strained effort to get somewhere. So D is overall just not really a good option. So A is the correct option. Now, I just want to put something out there. We just went through a massively long time explaining all of these options. Don't do that. This is the kind of question you should really rely on your intuition. You need to rely on your vocab knowledge. I mean, we've all been speaking English for probably like 15 to 17 years now. We should be pretty well versed in it. We can know our own language. So have faith in yourself and answer this question as quickly as possible. You don't want to waste too much time on this question because frankly, there are other questions that deserve a lot more time than this. And yeah, and someone said, yeah, C is also wrong because it has a tonal mismatch. Yeah, you're correct. And I actually did state that when I was explaining. Okay, we got a good set of problems here for you. So I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes to do this starting now. All right, everybody, 3 minutes are up. So let's come back and check out these questions. All right, the first question. There's a bunch of exchange students. They are allowed to view but not handle the something artifacts at the archaeological site. So already off the bat, we can say that fragile is a really good option. I would probably choose that automatically because fragile means delicate, easy to break, and you can apply it to objects and people. And artifacts are an object. There's really nothing wrong with option A. Option B, weak. So weak can be interpreted multiple ways. It is kind of similar to fragile, but it's more general. In this case, specific is better than general, because the more specific your adjective is, the better it is, the better your reader will understand things. I mean, what can weak mean in this case? It can mean fragile and it can mean easily breakable, but weak could mean other things like they were weak artifacts in that they were not really that fascinating, or they were kind of boring. Or it could mean weak in that they couldn't do their job properly. It can mean a lot of things. So A being more specific, A is like a better version of B. So B will be wrong. C, decrepit. Most of you are probably not going to know what this word means. I didn't know what this word means when I read this question and I looked it up. Yeah, by the way, you're not going to be able to look things up obviously on the SAT. So if you don't know the definition of a word, then try to use context clues as best as you can and see if it sounds similar to another word you know. Other than that, there's really no other option than just try and figure it out. Decrepit is kind of weird. It means decaying and already in like a weakened state. Now, that's kind of a strong word to use here because the artifacts are not decaying, they're not dying or anything like that. And decrepit is usually used for something that is already harmed or hurt or already afflicted with a bad quality. So C is just not going to work here. Now, D, sickly. Sickly can usually is used for humans or living things when they're, sick. You could say that, oh, well, sickly could be used for physical objects and say that they look sickly. For example, like a vase that looks like it has warts on it. I don't know, but that is a really far-fetched option. And frankly, when you have A, why even select D? A is the correct option. Okay, now the next question is a little bit tough because there are some good answers. By breaking down organic material like leaf litter and rainforest, termites endorse soil health, biodiversity, and plant longevity. So option A, endorse, when I first read this, I felt option A was pretty good, Endorse is used when you're either trying to advertise something, or it could sometimes be used in that it benefits something. Now, the benefits something, from what I actually learned, endorse you being used in that way where it benefits something is actually not that common, and it's not ideal actually in this case. So A is okay, but it's not as good of an option as most people think it is. B, popularize. Termites popularize soil health. Yeah, that's an image that is kind of funny. I can just imagine like termite cheerleaders, popularizing soil health. Like, yeah, soil health. Yeah, B just doesn't make any sense here at all. Termites cannot popularize something. We're trying to say, it's kind of obvious what they're trying to say. We're trying to say that termites help soil health. Now, let's go to option D, urge. This is also kind of a funny one. I can just imagine the termites yelling at the dirt, urging them, come on, get better. Yeah, D just doesn't make any sense. Termites cannot urge something. They don't use the word that way. So yeah, D is just wrong. C, promote. Oh wait, let's not just circle it just yet. C is a really good option, promote, because promote is kind of similar to endorse in that it can be used in an advertising way. Usually endorse is better than promote when it comes to advertising, but promote can also be used in a normal benefit style way where you say, for example, broccoli promotes general body health, would you really say broccoli endorses general health? Normally, I would say that promote is a better word to use. So A and C are like two sides of the same coin, where A is better for advertising, while C is better for general use and benefiting circumstances. So C will be the correct option, although A is okay. Just remember on the SAT, okay answers they don't get you any points. So you still need to find the best answer. You're not going to get like half credit or anything. All right. The last question. I got a funny comment, which is that was this question written by Bernie Sanders? No, it wasn't, but I'm not surprised if you thought it was. According to a recent study, the average CEO at a large corporation in the US makes 271 times more money than the company's classic American worker. Okay, first of all, 271 times more money. Yeah, that's a lot. And also, that is a gross understatement. So just putting that out there. And also, is classic the right word to use here? You can kind of get a feel for what they're trying to say. We're trying to say that we're talking about your normal American worker. Classic is a weird word because classic in a way kind of means normal, but rather than normal, classic so more it means original. And original can be interpreted as normal, but they do have differences. And classic is used in a very positive light, where it is like the good old classic waffles, that you and your family will always love, or something like that. It is trying to, it means original. It means the best original, the best parts about being original. Now, we're not trying to really do that. We're not trying to say the original American worker. We're talking about now. We're not talking about back then. We're talking about the normal American worker. And we're not trying to do it in a positive light either, because we're trying to show the plight of the American worker, which is that they're the normal worker and they're not as well off. They're not doing so well. So A is just going to be wrong definition wise and kind of tonally wise. Now, B, predictable. The company's predictable American worker. The use here is kind of weird, and you can sort of feel it that B is wrong because we're trying to say the normal American worker, but normal doesn't necessarily correlate the strongest with predictable, and they mean different things. And predictable can still be applied to abnormal situations. C, typical. This quite literally means normal. That's it. That's the answer. Typical works. I mean, you would use typical in the sentence, wouldn't you? You would use average, you would use normal. They pretty much all kind of mean the same thing in this context. D, distinctive. D is obviously wrong because it is the opposite of what we want. It is the opposite of normal. It means different. Phew, okay, so 8:20. Okay, yeah, we have a lot of time left. Concision. This is a technique you're going to need to know. It is what I like to call getting rid of trash. It is the act of removing redundancy from something. And redundancy, I discussed this as a student in the beginning, if some of you might remember. It is when there is a phrase or sentence where multiple words are used that kind of mean the same thing, and it makes the sentence really weird. For example, a large, huge elephant. She looks beautiful and gorgeous. The token is a symbol and representation of our power. One of the two words used, underlined words used in each sentence is not necessary, and they serve no purpose. What is the point in calling the elephant large and huge? Okay, you said large. We already know it's big. Why did you have to say huge? It does nothing but take up space and just makes a sentence weird to read. Okay, let's take a look at this passage and read the sentence. Some commentators claim that there is an excess of too many pressing constraints on the federal budget. I'm pretty sure you don't need me to tell you that the sentence reads pretty weirdly. What you need to do is you need to find the redundant terms and then choose the option that eliminates them. What are the redundant terms? In this sentence, we're obviously trying to say that there are too many pressing constraints. So in option A, or in options in general, which options have a double part to this? So is an excess, that is a part of the phrase that says there are too many, but then we also literally have too many right there. There are two parts that explain the same thing. We don't need one of those. It reads quite weirdly. So A is out of the game. B is too much of an excess of. So this is also going to be wrong because we have too much and an excess. C are in abundance, that's one, and then too many, that's two. C is wrong. The D, there's too many. D is the correct answer because there's only one part that is saying there are too many. And if you read it out, if you put D in the sentence, it says some commentators claim that there are too many pressing constraints on the federal budget. That reads very nicely. A question says, would it be correct in a situation to eliminate all options that begin with is because is doesn't make much sense? So let's see. No, not necessarily, because is can work. If you, for example, in option A, if you eliminated of too many, you could just say some commentators claim that there is an excess of pressing restraints on the federal budget. So is can absolutely work. You shouldn't really use like restrictions like that, such as is or are, and is wrong in this case, because there's definitely a situation where both of those work, and that is probably going to be the same case on most of these questions. Yeah, no problem. Okay, now here is some practice. I am going to give you guys 2 minutes to do this starting now. All right, then everybody, let's come back and check out these questions. Honestly, these are pretty easy, so I'm not surprised if most of you had a good time with this. Okay, most commonly known and thought of by the names prickly pear and nopal. Yeah, we don't need to read any further. We already know what they're trying to say. They want to say that the prickly pear and nopal are referenced, and we only need one part of the phrase to say that. Most commonly known and thought of, that is, those are both redundant, so A is wrong. D. Now, D might seem like a good option to some because it says a cactus genus known by the names prickly pear and nopal. It is like a logical introduction, like a standard introduction. However, it is redundant because you say a cactus genus, right? Later on, it says genus of cactus. You have the same phrase basically now in the same sentence twice. That means D is redundant. If you read a little bit further, you would have realized that. Or you just selected the right answer and you didn't even have to do that. C, widely known as and referred to. Yeah, known as, referred to, two aspects. We don't need C. B, commonly known. This is the correct one because it only says what we need to say once. One question asks, if we have an answer choice that is both short and clearly fits in the underlined portion, can we make that our answer? Okay, so the question was, if the answer is this long and the line is this long on the test, should we put this answer there if all the other answers are far too long for this line? No, the length of the line has literally nothing to do with the correctness of the answer. So don't rely on the length of the answer within the test. You should only rely on the correctness of the answer. Literally half the time, the the answer line will be really small. The correct answer is going to be astronomically large. Okay, next question. Yankee great Lou Gehrig, loved and adored. Okay, yeah, we have loved and adored. We don't need both of those, so A is wrong. B, a baseball player loved by his fans. Okay, we only have one loved, so that means B is good, right? Wrong. It says baseball player there, right? So we're saying the phrase baseball player. Well, later on, it says he had a tremendous baseball career. So it is kind of redundant. If you replace the underlined portion with B, you would see it is kind of awkward. Yankee great Lou Gehrig, a baseball player loved by fans for both his tremendous baseball career and his battle with motor neuron disease, became the first Major League Baseball player to have his number retired. Even worse, we have baseball player at the end right there. Ultra redundant. 3 times. B is wrong. Now, D, loved and adored by fans of baseball. This is like the ultimate worst answer because we have two things stating that people like Lou Gehrig, and then we mentioned baseball on top of it. D is so wrong. C is the correct answer. It does what it has to. It just says Lou Gehrig was adored by fans. It doesn't say anything else that it has to. Let us move on. Okay, informal and casual language. This is kind of a fun one. Okay, generally there are two ways that authors are going to write. They're going to write either formally or they're going to write casually. Casual writing is going to use a lot of fun terms, whereas formal writing is going to just have that tone to it. It uses strong vocabulary. It doesn't use any you know awkward, or no, not awkward necessarily. It doesn't use any somewhat grammatically incorrect writing. There are sometimes cases where even if something is slightly incorrect, it is still acceptable to use in English language. Let's just say formal is spotless. There are no cracks in the writing whatsoever. There are no like idioms. There are no like sayings or fun phrases. There's nothing like that. So the first job when it comes to saying whether or not something is formal or casual, well, you just need to look at the vocabulary usually and try to imagine how it's being read. We can sort of tell that this passage is formal because it is purely factual. That's another thing. Formal passages have a high chance of being factual or historical. So, for example, in this passage, towards the end of the 1400s, as the Renaissance was reaching its height in Florence, Italy, members of the city's powerful Will Guild were celebrating their recently completed city cathedral. It uses a lot of decent vocabulary, such as reaching, powerful. Celebrating is not necessarily strong vocabulary, my bad. Recently, informal versions of this could be like, say, members of the city's strong wool guild. Strong is kind of a weird word to use here. And celebrating, another example could be celebrating the city cathedral, which was finished just some time ago. That is a little bit more casual. Or it could be something like they were celebrating the city cathedral, which was done just a couple of days ago. That is kind of casual, right? So overall, we can tell this whole passage is formal. We need an answer that is formal. Let's look at 25, option A. Let's read the sentence so we can get context. It was a triumph that added to Florence's reputation from sophistication and beauty, yet the guild members are eager to fancy it up even more. That is very casual language. I would never ever use it up in any sort of formal paper, so A is going to be wrong. I will say there's not always like a clear definition of why something is informal. This is kind of another intuition thing where you just know it is informal. B, make it look super rich. Super, that's a pretty informal word, so B is wrong. D, give it a wow factor. That is an idiom, that is a phrase used casually, so D is wrong. C, increase its splendor. That is a formal phrase. It uses vocabulary like splendor. There is nothing grammatically wrong with it. C is the correct answer. So here is some practice. It might seem difficult, but it won't be that difficult. Just read like the first couple of sentences of each passage, and you'll be able to figure out the tone and then just choose the right phrase straight from there. I'll give you guys 3 minutes to do this starting now. All right, everybody. 3 minutes are up, so let's come back and check out these questions. Okay, the first passage, I'm not going to read the entire passage because you guys already did that. The first passage is a formal passage. Why is that? Because there is no casual language here. It is purely factual, the whole passage. And yeah, there's just no like jokes, and there's no like fun or quirky aspects to the passage at all. So even though it doesn't seem as formal as other passages, it is technically formal. Formal is less about does it feel formal and more about does it have no casual elements whatsoever. It's a question about what it doesn't have rather than what it does have. So we need a formal phrase. Made a break for it. So made a break for it, that is a casual phrase. That is like a metaphor or idiom. I get the two confused. A is wrong. B, took flight. That is a very casual phrase. B is wrong. D, flew the coop. Very casual phrase. C, escaped. It just says escaped. It does the job. It is decently acceptable vocabulary. There's nothing wrong with it. C is the right answer. Next question, sorry, the next passage. This is a casual passage. So what tells me this is that it uses some casual phrasing, such as it breaks up the monotony. And for example, you could another one is dig up a stamp and walk a letter. Those all necessarily are not grammatically correct, or they don't they're not used formally, basically. So this is a casual passage. Now we need a casual answer. So next time you want to reach out to a loved one. So reach out, that's kind of actually a casual phrase. You will not use that formally. Although I will admit it sounds kind of standard because a lot of us may have grown up with it. It's just a normal phrase. So reach out, it's a good answer. B, correspond with. That is advanced vocabulary. That is formal. B is wrong. C, dispatch communication to. That is so unnecessary and wordy. C is wrong. D, epistolize. I'm not gonna lie. I don't even know what that means. I don't. So automatically D is wrong, because even if I don't know what it means, that is some freaky alien vocabulary and we can immediately know it's wrong since we want a casual answer. Okay, syntax. This is a question type where you need to put words and phrases together effectively. Now, you do this kind of intuitively, and for example, let's just go with the question. Oniuli Beach in Maui has black sand. The sand is made up of ground lava instead of ground coral or shells. So in order to combine this passage, we need to get rid of the sand, or at least one of the sands, and think in your head how you would combine this. I would combine it, let's say this way. Oniuli Beach in Maui has black sand, which is made up of ground lava instead of ground coral and shells. So this is a question type where there's often going to be a couple of decent answers. You have to choose the best one. Option A, this is wrong because it is no change. There is no syntax. There's no combination. So it is wrong. Oftentimes, it is better to combine sentences if you can. But don't make it like they're too long. These are obviously two short sentences and that they would combine well. The next question. Sand, comma, with the sand being. So this kind of works because there's nothing grammatically wrong with it, but it is slightly redundant because it mentions sand twice. Same for option 3, sand and sand. Option 4, that is actually exactly what I thought that I would use. If an option matches exactly what you would use, it is probably the correct answer. And it is not redundant because there's only one sand. So option 4 is the correct option. Okay, here is some practice. It's only one question. I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes to do this because this can be a little bit rearranging. If you do it quick, then power to you. All right, everybody, 3 minutes are up. So let's come back and check out these questions. So let's look at the options right away. We don't really need to reread the top sentence. Okay, option A. Actually, let's start with a different option. Okay, do you guys remember our good old friend modifiers? Now, modifiers, remember, they are an action that is performed by the noun and then the noun has to immediately come after it or come after it as soon as possible. And if there's another noun that inserts itself before the target noun, then that means that everything is wrong. We need to apply that same logic here. For example, consider D. Considered an invasive weed. Okay, considered an invasive weed. What is considered an invasive weed? It's obviously valerian, right? But then the next noun that comes after that is Connecticut. So you're saying that Connecticut is an invasive weed? No, you're not saying that. D is grammatically incorrect for that reason. C is also the same situation. Flowering herb that has been used as a medicinal plant for centuries. Connecticut. You're saying Connecticut is a flowering herb that is medicinal. I mean, I love Connecticut that a lot, but I wouldn't say it's medicinal. So C is wrong. B, considered an invasive weed in Connecticut, but it was banned in 2004. Okay, before we say that, I just want you to tell me if that sentence sounds like something a fourth grader wrote, like considered an invasive weed in Connecticut, but it was banned in 2004. It's like it's a weird whiplash, you know, you're having a sentence and you say, but it was banned in 2004. That's like a sort of breakaway from the sentence, and the but really doesn't make any sense here. If the sentence was done properly, it would say, considered an invasive weed in Connecticut. And even I'm struggling to come up with considered an invasive weed in Connecticut and being banned in 2004. Valerian is a flowering herb. That is a sentence that could work, even though even that sentence sounds kind of awkward. B is wrong because, yeah, it's just wrong. Also, like another thing, considered an invasive weed in Connecticut. This is a reference to valerian, right? So after reference, you need the noun. But what the sentence is doing here exactly is making a reference and then it's making another reference. So you have two references side by side. That grammatically never goes well. It sounds so weird to read. Option A is going to be the correct option because it follows all the rules. A flowering herb, I'm just going to switch to a different color just because. A flowering herb used as a medicinal plant for centuries. Let me erase the top stuff. Okay. Valerian. Okay, so it's saying valerian is the flowering herb in this case. That is good. That is proper modifier usage. Now, what about the next part? Valerian is considered an invasive weed in the state of Connecticut, which banned it in 2004. We say Connecticut, and then we say Connecticut banned it in 2004. That is also a match. A is the correct option, through and through. Okay, time to continue on. And someone in the question asks, you shouldn't use references side by side. I'm just gonna say this because I'm not 100% sure. I've never ever seen situations where references are used side by side, at least as separate sentence parts. For example, like if you did what I said before, and also another student in the chat has a good example. Considered an invasive weed in Connecticut and banned in 2004. Those are two pieces of information about valerian, but they're in the same clause. They're being bridged by and. So that is considered like a single reference. But if you have double reference where, oh boy, what did I do? Okay. If you have double references where it's like an invasive weed in Connecticut, but it was banned in 2004, those are like two separate pieces of information that are being separated by the comma and the but. So yeah, those are two references and you should not have those side by side generally. I have never ever seen a situation where two references are used side by side properly. Just don't confuse that with combined information. Oh boy, okay, here's a quiz. I am going to give you guys 4 minutes to do this starting now. All right then, everybody. 5 minutes are up. So let's come back and check out these questions. All right, first question, graphical analysis. We need to make sure that the information is represented accurately. So they want us in the underlined portion to talk about the average daily low temperature. So the average daily low temperature is the solid line on the graph. And option A is saying that average daily low temperature can drop to as low as 20 degrees. Now that is true, yes, but there's actually a better answer. So the thing is, the phrase over here, and average daily low temperatures can drop to as low as 20 degrees. That's sort of implying that 20 degrees is the minimum. That is as low as it will go. But that's not true, right? The graph clearly has 12 as the lowest value, and B is actually going to be the better option because it is correct and it is more correct than option A. A is like correct technically, but B is more specific and it doesn't have that small addition as low as, which sort of gives like a false impression that 20 is the lowest value. And C is also wrong because it's just factually wrong because on December 13th, which is 19 degrees, that is not the lowest temperature. And D is wrong because statistically the graph has never dropped to 10 degrees at all. So the thing is, got a question. So the question said the winter, it's talking about the winter, right? However, in this case, the question is talking about March, or we're referring to March. So the thing is that if you look on the graph, it is still relatively close to 12 in this area. And March is really close to winter, so you can sort of take that as like a gamble. And also option A, like we said, is just still has the issues even if you take the winter aspect into account, because the saying that they can get as low as 20 degrees makes it sound like it can't get any lower than that, when that's false, because even in January we can clearly see it is always below 20. Now the next question, okay, let me rearrange some stuff. Okay. The next question, we're talking about apples and we need to choose the right word. So one MCP, it is some kind of, all you need to know is that it's some kind of thing that makes apples last longer. And we can sort of tell that they want to say that the apple remains strong in a way, because they also use the word crisp here, which is sort of like a context clue. So keeping an apple tight, what does that mean? That's kind of a vague usage of the word, right? I wouldn't use tight to describe a fresh apple. A is kind of a weird option. B, firm. Apples that are firm and crisp. You would often use firm to describe an apple, and firm is the most literal word here, actually. You're just saying that it is strong. It is an apple. It's not saucy. It's not mushy. It is kind of fresh. So B is a really good option. C, stiff. Stiff doesn't necessarily mean strong. It means that you're immovable. Like, I have a stiff shoulder. I cannot move my shoulder. It doesn't mean strong, or it doesn't mean firm or rock solid. Um, oh yeah, this is a question reference type. Okay, one person asked, how do you know that they're talking about tight? There are other underlined words. I know that they're talking about tight because this is marked as question 25, and this is number 25. Back to our question. Yeah, stiff is just a bad option overall. D, taut. Taut is a unique meaning. Taut means it is stretched tight and thin. You could say, for example, that when the parachute opened, it was stretched taut, which means it was stretched tightly as far as it could. Or you would say that, for example, your skin is taut to your body because it is tightly linked to your body, usually. I would not describe an apple this way. You could say that the skin is taut, but that you can kind of tell that's not what we want from this. We want to say that the apple is strong and hard, and taut doesn't necessarily mean that. So B is the best answer. I know we're going over time, but don't leave just yet. We're still going over this. Okay, the next question. This is a question. It's a redundancy question, concision. So, okay, because Joel works such tremendously long hours is the reason why. Okay, there are two redundant aspects. One, the redundant aspects are the areas where we're trying to explain why Joel can't see his friends. And because, let me choose a different color. Okay, because does that, and then saying the reason why also does that. We don't need both of those. So A is wrong. D, being that Joel works such tremendously long hours, semicolon? That is weird. We don't need a semicolon right here. We need a comma. So D is wrong. I'll explain a lot later why where semicolons should be used. C, being that Joel works such tremendously long hours is the reason why. Okay, being that and the reason why are two phrases that do the same thing. So C is wrong. B is the correct answer because it has because, and that is it. That is the only explanatory introductory statement. The next one, it's a vocab choice question, but we need to choose the right tone. This is actually a formal versus casual question. Now, is this a formal passage or a casual passage? This is actually a formal passage because there is no casual text here at all. So therefore we need to choose a formal answer. So sinister. Sinister is used sort of comically. You would say that's a sinister villain, or ooh, how sinister, something like that. It can be used formally, but in this case it's not being used formally because sinister, if you're using it really formally, sinister would be used to describe true evil. They're calling the food sinister in option A. That is kind of comical. So A is going to be wrong. Sinister is being used in a funny way. B, thoroughly. Thoroughly is a unique word. Some of you might not know, but as far as I understand, thoroughly means kind of rotten or just kind of overall bad quality. It is used by ship people a lot, I'm pretty sure. And it is also casual language. So B is wrong. D, icky. That is the peak of casual language. That is like baby language right there. I would not use that myself, even if I was writing a casual passage. Abysmal is the only logical, formal, unfunny, or uncasual word to use here. And abysmal, the definition just means very low quality or very bad. It can be used in a funny way, but it is not being used in a funny way here if you choose that. Yeah, so with the quiz ended and your questions probably answered, this will be the last slide for today. I hope you all learned a good amount today. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you. Also, I mean, I unmuted if you want to like say thank you or anything. But yeah, I will see you guys later next week. Have a fantastic weekend, and I'll talk to you later. Oh, there's some people with questions.
Thank
Do
you,
you have a
Alfred.
question?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. So my question was, I think I asked about like the simplifying version, like if we should pick the short answer, but I probably like should have done it in a better formatting. But what I meant is, if we have a question, right? For example, like the no change
Mhm.
question, and it has like, all these like long options and there's just like a short one, right? And it's like
Mhm.
simplified, but it also like covers all the details in it. Like I think there was
Oh,
one
okay.
about
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
the
It's okay. You don't
baseball
have
one.
to, yeah, you don't have to explain further. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, if the question accomplishes everything that you need and it is the shortest answer, that means it is concise. That is another good factor to have. That means it is probably the best answer. Yes.
Okay. In most cases.
No, pretty much in all cases. There's no need to be long and wordy if, you don't have to.
Okay, so if there is an answer choice that is, concise, it has all the information in it, but it's also, short and simplified, just choose that answer
Yes.
without thinking further.
Simplification is underrated, honestly. Simplification is usually the best way to go most of the time. All these essay graders and all these people, they hate complication.
Okay, that
No
makes
problem.
sense.
Yeah.
Um, And I had another question too. If that's
I'm
okay.
sorry. Unfortunately, since there's other people, you might need to
Okay.
shoot the text later or email. But for now, yeah. Some questions in the chat. Will we get to use a dictionary? No, no dictionaries allowed. You have your vocabulary. You need to rely on it. Mridula, you have a question?
Yeah, so like I wasn't able to attend last week's
Oh,
class.
okay. If you can attend last week's class, I don't know. There might be a recording of it online. I'll ask my superiors about that, and I'll try to put an update in the WhatsApp group. If I don't put an update, that probably means that there is no recording we're allowed to use. So sorry if you missed it.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Bye then. Sorry, you have a question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you
right?
just fine.
Yes. Is there a possibility that you can post this PowerPoint in WhatsApp group so that we can go over it?
I was thinking about that. I'll try and ask my higher ups if I'm allowed to do that. To be honest, I'm probably not gonna be allowed to do that because I mean it's like content, but I'll ask them. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
no problem. Have a good night.
You too.
Another question: what would you recommend to someone getting better at questions where you have to pick the best word to replace underlined word? I don't know. It's kind of like a long-term thing. You just need to read and in general, and it's just kind of a vocabulary thing. You just know your vocabulary. And if you don't know the word, then try to use context clues. And yeah, that's pretty much all the advice I can give you. Sorry, that's kind of like a question that you just need to practice. You just need to practice it. And yeah, my number for people who want it, some people were asking 9973297. This is my number. Also, I'm in the WhatsApp group, so you can find my name and text me on WhatsApp. I would prefer it if you guys text me on WhatsApp since it is much easier. And oh wait, no, I accidentally didn't send that to everyone. Let me send my phone number again. Yeah, that is my phone number, 732-997-9864. Copy that. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you. If there are no more questions, then I'll say bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.